Welcome to the HabitStack Podcast, where we talk to fellow founders who are in the thick of things as they execute their plans to grow their business. Because stories about past successes are interesting, but hearing from people who are in the middle of the battle right now, that's invaluable. I am Scott Ward, founder of HabitStack. I'm here today with Karley Cunningham, who is the founder of BigBoldBrand.com and the creator of the Surefire Method, which we're going to hear about. Karley, I'm delighted to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
I'm excited to be here. It's always great to be on a podcast where the host has a radio voice. So you're going to make both of us sound really good.
It's my mic, right? Because if I get real close, it sounds really good. Anyway, so I have a bunch of questions for you. I want to hear all kinds of things, but let's just start maybe with an overview of what the heck you are up to in this world. Well, who's Karley and what are you about?
Oh, who am I and what am I about? Geez. What's the term? Is it multi-potentialite? My brain can give in direction at any given time, which is always interesting in my head. Maybe not for others. It might seem like a bit of chaos, but what I am best at and what I love doing is I love throwing it all at the wall because I am a strategist. So I'll get in rooms with clients, or, you and I could get in a room and you'd be like, Karley, I'm stuck on this one thing. And I'd be like, okay. And I just get really curious so that we uncover what's actually going on. We uncover what are the pieces in place. We uncover, what are the barriers. And I am really good at seeing the constellations of, I'm seeing this. Is this true? Well, if that's true, how does it lead to or affect that? And so I help folks unpack things and get to a clearer way forward. I love developing clarity, which in essence, then we can codify, which then creates confidence because it's out of someone's head and it's down on paper. And when, for example, I work with a lot of founders. I love working with founders, especially those that work in the areas of the novel, the complex, and the technical, because they're way back here in what I call PhD land. And they can't sell what they do, the product they're bringing to market, the service they're delivering, if they can't have this up close conversation that we're having right now. So part of my job is bridging that gap for them and helping them get what's in their head, and also look at it linguistically of, you're speaking PhD. How do we have this, human level conversation to explain what you do and the value of it and why it makes a difference and why it helps people?
It's so valuable to be able to have somebody like you to come in and do that bridging work. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on this. Like, how much of that skill that you have has come from just kind of you were born with it, and how much of it is something that you learned over the years, and how did that happen?
Well, I think that born with it, full disclosure, because I think that we don't talk about challenges and neurodiversity enough, and we're just learning more about it. Is full disclosure, I was just diagnosed with ADHD this year at the age of 50. And so I'm unpacking, well, what does that neurodivergence mean? Or, some people refer to it as neurospiciness. I haven't found a term for it that I like, but essentially it just means I'm wired differently. And so I see things differently. I perceive the world differently. And there are certain characteristics of folks with ADHD, like we notice, we can handle a lot of information, we can notice the patterns. So I think a lot of that has been who I am. And throughout the course of the years, I was figuring it out blindly because I didn't know that I am wired that way.
Right.
But now I'm intentionally going, like this morning, I spent time going, I love bringing on new clients. I love uncovering their challenges. I love working with them to solve them. Why is it so damn hard for me to develop a proposal? And so I love using ChatGPT as your therapist, as your unpacker of things. And it's like, well, it's the perfect storm for someone with ADHD because you're, requiring many decisions. You're layering in these different aspects of thinking, and it essentially short circuits your brain. So part of what I love doing is hacking things and building systems that make it easier, which is exactly what I do for clients. They come to me with a problem. They tell me where they want to go and where they want to be. We figure out their roadblock, and I help them blueprint how to get from here to there, or how to deliver things more consistently, which is what the Surefire Method is about. So I would say it probably 60-40. 60, it's always been there. 40, it's the gift of having the space and time and education and opportunity to refine what I do.
Makes sense. So you said something earlier, Karley. You said the Surefire Method, and actually, I introduced you as being the creator of that. But I don't know. I think it would be interesting to hear more about it. What the heck is the Surefire Method?
Thanks for asking. It was initially a method I developed to improve the results that clients were getting from going through branding activities. So it could be a rebrand. It could be when I say rebrand, I'm thinking of it, I'm always sitting at the strategy level. So for our listeners, for you, my work is as a strategist. I help build execution plans. I don't step below. And so when I'm talking about developing a brand, the way I'm looking at it is your brand is your reputation times your exposure. And so when you put that in an equation, if you've got a great reputation and you're getting lots of exposure, that means that you're doing a bunch of things correctly. You are positioned well, you are delivering consistently, which equals your brand. So a brand, I see it as an output. And so as a strategist, I'm going, how do we develop the brand that clients want to have? And it's not just about the positioning. It's not just about the messaging. It's not just about the strategy or the visual brand identity. There's a whole container that goes into that. Unfortunately, in my life as a branding expert, pre this, that would have probably been version 3.0 of me before now. I uncovered probably the wrong people who are working on branding to an extent. We've got creative types who do the design, who create beautiful, resonant messaging, but less so we're strategists working on it going, okay, how do we use these things that we develop, these tangible outputs, and get the result that the client wants? And also consider that we're handing these things, words on a page is how they're traditionally viewed. We're handing them to clients and saying, project done, you're positioned, your brand is now ready to be developed. And the client's left holding this thing going, well, yay, project's done. Thank you. But now what do we do with it?
What now?
And so the first iteration of the Surefire Method was to, at the back end of it, teach the clients how to turn these words on a page into a powerful set of tools to build the brand that they wanted to achieve that result. You know, they're here, their brand is perceived as this, they want to be perceived as that. How do I teach them to get there? And that was working. What was very interesting and unexpected to me was that our clients, when I started teaching them how to use the tools, which aren't going to be foreign to the listeners, and I'll unpack it a little bit, is what is your purpose? Why does your business exist beyond making a profit? What's your purpose statement, your why? What are your guiding principles is what I call them. What are your values, and how are you empowering your team to live those values, display the behaviors, act out the behaviors that you expect from them? What are your UVPs, your unique value propositions? People using those in the day-to-day to not just communicate how you're different, but also to deliver differently. And so teaching folks how to use these tools, our clients, those that were really driven to make an impact in the world, to be the best in their industry, driven by, that true purpose, they started doubling revenue year over year over year. They started achieving 5-year goals in 2.5 years. And so the acceleration that was happening from what was built as build a better, stronger brand and reputation, build a great reputation, boost your exposure, get more business for clients, was achieving way more than that. Mm-hmm. And so I started asking our clients, okay, so we well know from your experience and my observation and us tracking results that this isn't just a branding system. So what is it? Because I'm in my own wine, I'm my own wine label or bottle trying to read the label, trying to figure it out. They're on the outside, and their answer was, I don't know, but it's really awesome. And I was like, okay. So what I figured out, and you said, what am I up to now? I'm writing my book. And through the process of writing the book, what I have uncovered, it is the missing system in business. And that missing system has been the system of alignment. You hear people say, you need to align your values. You need to align this department with that department. You need to align your systems and your processes with your people. Well, how? Create that alignment. How do we align everyone and everything so we're all heading in the same direction, rowing at the same cadence?
That's really interesting. And I think it does seem like it's much more, it's bigger and different than what I associate with the branding exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, what's an example of a pernicious misalignment that, Surefire was able to uncover and ended up, impacting velocity for our company?
Pernicious misalignment. Another word person. I love it. Okay, let me think about this for a minute. I think one of the big things, and I go to values often when I explain one of the tools, because most people know we're supposed to have our values defined. What do we value? But essentially, I transition those to guiding principles because I wanted them to feel like a more activated tool. So often we hear the story, your values are painted on the wall. Great. People walk by the day. But at some point, they just tune them out.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is always, well, is anybody holding your team accountable to those values? Or are you just expecting them to live them because you spent some money and painted them on the wall? How are we using those? So if we talk about misalignment, is you've got your values on your website. You say, these are our values. So therefore, this is what you can expect from us. So a client comes in, a prospect, let's say they read through oh, okay, great. I feel like we're values aligned because I value the same things that you do. And our company displays those in behavior. We deliver on those. You can expect those from us. If your team is not trained, the misalignment becomes the experience the client gets. And the things that you stand up for and hold true to and the way you behave is insanely misaligned. And so I call that the gap. So this is what we, and if, I know we're videotaping this as well, but for the audio listeners, imagine I've got two hands and one signifies one side of and the other, and in the middle is a gap. And it can be, the gap the size of a stream or a gap the size of the Grand Canyon. And so if you're promising and on one set of things, your client is standing on the one side going, my understanding of you is that this is what I can expect of you because these are your values. If you deliver on those values, there is no gap. And they walk across that space and go through your experience. If you don't deliver on those values and you don't act in accordance with them, then all of a sudden that gap gets wider and wider and wider. And the visual I always say is someone falls into that gap,
Right.
Which is where you lose trust, you break relationship, and that's really hard to come back from, which is devastating for business.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what would be like a couple examples of falling into that gap? I guess it's I'm just out of curiosity, what are some situations that you've observed customers being disappointed with the difference between what's on the website and what they experience?
Let's just let's pull one out of the air.
Yeah.
We're a people first who care deeply about the people in our ecosystem. And it's not always just about the values delivered to the client. It's about people in your ecosystem. So if we think gap, we think this company has a stellar reputation for their products. But when you go to their Glassdoor page, their ranking is really low. Their people satisfaction is low. People that are leaving the company are roasting the company on this website to warn others not to work for them. And you're thinking, okay, you deliver a quality product. You say that you care about people, but you're doing nothing to deliver, doing nothing to care for your people. That is a big hole and a big gap that people fall into.
So somebody says, a leader says, look, one of our values, our guiding principles is to put people first.
Mm-hmm.
What more is there to do, Carly? Everybody's just going to do it, right? They heard it. They
Yeah.
put it in the memo, and so it's it's established. It's in operational cadence now. So what's the problem? What goes
What's
wrong?
the problem? So if they're okay, so when I uncover, if I ask a client, do you have a set of values? They go, yes. I'm like, great. Can you send those over? The definition of the value or that guiding principle is really shallow, or it doesn't exist, because the leader has their understanding of what people first means. So let's say you and I are co-founders of a company. What people first means to me is going to be different than what people means to you. So we need to come together and go, what does people first mean in our company? And how do we explain that so it is clear and concise to everyone? This is what people first means to us. And as a result, this is how we expect you to behave. And this is how those behaviors are what we expect you as our team to hold each other accountable and to hold us as leaders accountable. And so when that depth of definition and effectively demand comes from leadership, it's explicit. People understand it. But it's not just about having it on the page. And that is one of the steps in the Surefire method, is codifying it. What does it mean for us? This is us being very clear. Then it goes to aligning is the next step. So we now need to align our team by doing a town hall or a facilitated exercise, or bringing in someone to facilitate on behalf of us so that it is neutral, what it means, how we live it. Let's talk through examples of how we activate that people first value. Let's talk about what it means in finance, what it means in HR, what it means in R&D. How do each of these departments live people first? Because it shows up differently dependent upon their role. And everybody always says to me, yeah, but I mean, our finance office is just a couple people in the back and they don't really touch customers. Okay, so let's walk through that for a second here. Because if all of your people don't understand it, and if finance is the last department to touch a client that took you a year to land, a year to deliver on, they've become one of your largest clients. And when, think about big gorilla clients, that there's the money that's coming in. That's where the profit's coming from. And finance, they don't treat them people first. So let's say an invoice is overdue. Let's say something is going on with that client. Maybe they've hit a rough patch. Maybe there's been a death in the family. Like something has disrupted it on a personal people level. And they're just on them because they just want to get paid. They're money first. That's their job. But how do you transition that to people first? Because if they don't deliver people first, which the client has come to expect over this 2-year nurturing relationship, there's a disconnect, and that's jarring. And so the client kind of odd and doesn't feel right, and it sets the tone.
Right.
Let's say they call them again and they end up pissing them off because they are anything but people first, and the client goes, okay, that's it, we're done. So if you don't train everyone is at risk of breaking the trust, the relationship, the engagement. And that's why I always lean on finance, because they're often the ones that are like, they don't matter. They're just collecting bills. And, it says, yeah, they matter a lot.
I don't know if I can pull this question together, but I have this thing bouncing around in my head around, there's some values or guiding principles that are kind of, I don't want to say table stakes, but like this, the people first thing kind of, I'm not sure that you could have a contrary value to that, right? You couldn't establish like, we are not people first.
I can give you one that one
Okay.
of my clients was their primary value. Get shit done.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. That's interesting. And I do think of, maybe you're right. I think there are organizations where they definitely have a reputation for burning people out and like working really, just kind of, yeah, you're right. Like not kind of people,
Profit first.
but actually, I don't know if you would win at the profit first, like you wouldn't attract people, maybe not with the profit first thing, but with you're gonna learn a tremendous amount while we burn you out. You're gonna advance
Yeah.
like this is like a high intensity, high octane situation, and winning.
Mm-hmm.
Winning is
Yeah,
what you're going to learn to do here. Yeah, you could imagine that,
100%.
that would definitely be attractive
I
too.
mean, that's exactly why I stayed out of the Mad Men scene in Toronto when I first
Mm,
started my career in communications advertising. I loved the big thinking, the idea of producing these world-class ads and having the space and time to get in intricacies of what is human behavior and how do we influence and drive behavior. But what I didn't want was the 80-hour weeks, the you're not good enough, that's not fast enough, we need it yesterday, like that winning. We are here to win because that industry was very much, and to some extent can still be based on awards, which aren't about the people first. They're not about the clients. They're not about, hey, we're here to nurture a great culture and produce great work. It's just we're here to win.
right. I suppose I'm thinking, well, one of the things that I say to new people that I start to talk to or work with is, I care more about your success than your feelings. I'm not a jerk, but kind of get permission to push and and so
Yeah.
that's a way of me articulating a principle, an operational.
Well, to me, because I spend time evaluating and breaking these down, to me that says what you value is having people learn and grow and being able to mentor them, and also having gotten to know you a little bit. I don't think you're going to do it solely with a stick. I think you're going to do it in a people first manner, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
what I follow that up with is I do care about your feelings. I just care about your success even more. So
Yeah, and feelings can get in the way.
yeah, yeah. Okay, question for you. You made me think about something when you used the word positioning earlier,
Hmm.
and I'd be curious to hear. Are you familiar with April Dunford?
Oh, the name rings a bell.
He has
She
like
wrote a
a
book, yes?
positioning. Yeah, she's a kind of a software company focused positioning person, and I was just curious.
Got it, yes.
What's that?
Yep. I'm tracking with you now as to who she is. Yep.
Okay, okay. I'm just curious if you have any not critiques, but just kind of compare and contrast to your approach to April's. I'm pretty familiar with hers. Read the book a couple times and found
Okay,
it to
so
be helpful.
tell me.
Although I do also find that just like any other book, you're like, boom, this is awesome. I'm going to do this, and then you sit down and apply it to your own situation, and you're like, okay, this is more complicated. It's not
Yeah.
the worksheet looks easy, but I get lost in the exercise, even though it's broken down pretty clearly.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to pick on April in specific, but I think there's two ways to approach how you deliver in the world. Are you delivering that tool? The person, as one of my colleagues used to say, enough rope to hang themselves with so they have to call you.
Mm.
The day he said that to me, I was just like, oh, I just got this really kind of oof feeling. And I mean, I get it. It is a way to generate business. Let's give people a basic understanding, and can they run with it? Or there is, and I will attribute this to predictive ROI. If you've ever come into communications with Stephen Wessner and his partner Eric and their new strategist Hannah, their whole approach is to be incredibly generous and to give it away, because not everybody is going to be able to afford you, but their approach is give away the tool so that people can use it and so that they can get results from it. And their whole approach is if you give someone something that creates the value that's intended from it, and they go, wow, you gave me that for free. Imagine the value I would get from you if I actually engaged you and paid you. Holy cow. So I think there are those two schools of thoughts of, do you give your stuff away and let people choose whether they want to need to work with you? Or do you create not the trap door, but do you lock the door at a certain point so then they have to, insert coin to get through that door?
I
It's
think
just
you're
two
right.
different business
Yeah,
approaches.
it is two different approaches, but I think you I agree with you that that's really good advice that I've heard too, is you should actually give away the best things.
Hmm.
Um, and to be fair, I think that's what April does. It's just that actually what it turns out to be is that applying um, general expertise into a specific situation is hard. Books are hard to apply, basically.
Well, and as someone who is writing my book right now,
Mhm.
I'm trying to take not just my understanding of the Surefire method that took me 10 years to build and codify is, you know, from college all the way through, this depth of knowledge, expertise, honing things, understanding that when I'm facilitating, I'm not just pulling information, I am reading a room. And there might be one person in the corner, and it's usually our amazing introverts, because they're always the ones that are deep thinking, dropping the mic. I need to ensure that they're on board. Or if I catch some body language and go, hey, hold on a minute here. Are you tracking with us? I can tell you're thinking about something. What's not landing, or is this, and just continuing to get curious. If I'm delivering that in a book, I can't have that
Can't do it.
one-on-one
Yeah.
experience. And so let's assume that everyone doing their best. One, if we integrated all of those steps, the book would be an encyclopedia edition and nobody would read it. And two, there is such a gut instinct piece to what we do as we've honed our skill. You can't put that on paper.
I agree. Yeah, it's I mean, thank goodness for the time that we live in, and there's so much knowledge. It's incredible. It's incredible
Hmm.
that for almost any challenge that you have, somebody has dedicated their life to solving it and written a book.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's pretty.
Right?
I regularly have this conversation with people who are like, well, we're both scratching our heads and like, well, probably somebody has thought really hard about this. We should find out who. And so
Yeah.
it is with this like magical time, but at the same time, there's there are challenges to apply to specific situations. Okay, different question for you. What would you say to a founder who is fighting their way towards product market fit? And
Mm.
they're not even sure they're going to survive, that their startup has some traction, but it's a wild and woolly world still. And it does not feel like they can justify the time or the money to do like an expensive branding thing.
Hmm.
You say to them,
My head is bouncing between, are we talking about brand or are we talking about clarity? And the reason is because you kind of hit some key triggers in the process of when I tend to see. Let's suggest they are close on product market fit. They are making some sales, that next plateau. Is it hard because, well, usually what I find, it's hard because they haven't codified their fundamental beliefs and truths. So either they've gone light touch or they're missing some of the pieces. And you and I talked a little bit about this, and I'm going to circle back to this in our first conversation, was the Jenga board. So I'll pause that for a second. So have they codified, or some folks say it codified, their fundamental beliefs and truths, or I call them their non-negotiable beliefs, core beliefs, and their team's collective brilliance? Because again, that comes back to what we were talking about, the values. If you haven't codified your values and they're all in your head, as the founder, how is anybody supposed to know fully what they are? How are they supposed to interpret them? How are they supposed to understand them in the way that you understand them? That is what the Surefire method is designed to do, to unpack the core beliefs. Why does your business exist beyond making a profit? What are your values? What is your character, tone, and voice, and how do you want to make people feel? And where are you going in the next 3 to 5 years? Those set the standard, and some people would call them business strategy pieces. Those set the tone for how do we make decisions. And if everybody's not on the same page, business becomes very chaotic. And then to those teams' collective brilliance, well, who are you who's your ideal right fit client that you're most brilliant at working with? And how do you do it differently in the process of working with them? Or why is your product so freaking great and the experience of buying your product is so freaking great that sets you apart? And if you're not talking about it, part of your problem is likely that you're in the sea of sameness, sounding and feeling like everybody else, and your clients don't know why to choose you. But if you bring those two sets of tools out, the core beliefs, who we are, why we exist, what, and then we move into how we do it, why we're different, and our story. When you get clear on that set of tools and empower everyone on your team to use, we start to see that alignment, and we start to come above that point. We step up onto that next plateau of now we truly understand who we are, who we sell, and we can move forward, as opposed to, well, maybe we should add this extra service, or maybe we should try that market over there. Or what about that one? And someone else comes to the table and goes, well, I did this market research and said that we should go here. So did I answer your question?
Yeah. I'll ask some follow-up. So I think in some situations, a couple of things you said, we should go to this market, or maybe we should try this market. I mean, at a certain stage, that is literally what you're doing. Like that is actually the mandate in the middle. You're in the middle of that. And then just one other thing is that, and also like in terms of tone of voice, like what kind of tone of voice, it's like, well, whatever one is going to work, like there's a certain amount of pragmatism, like, well, what, we have, anyway, that would be
100%. But let me start with that one and then we'll jump back to the other one. So not everybody wants kilts if we talk about tone and how we show up in our character, right? The guys who clean the gutters, so many guys are not going to want to wear that wool kilt and deal with the chastising that comes from it. But if we solely rely on marketing and market research, and this is where I'm leading back to the other question is, if we're like, should we go after this market or that market because there's money over there? Really what we're doing is we're relying on market research out using the set of filters of our core beliefs and what makes us brilliant. So what most companies are doing is they're and I'm not picking on the book profit first. I'm literally picking on the value of our reason for being a business is making money. You're literally just throwing a dart at a board of like, here's 10 markets. Which one do we want to go after? Instead of saying, well, we don't want to be men in kilts, but we do want to show up professionally and noticeably, because that is something, professionalism is one of our values, if say it is. And how else do we evaluate these 10 choices? If we narrow it down to the top 3, which one is the best fit for us that allows us to show up authentically? Because you cannot fake character. You cannot fake who you really are and or in a business, all of the characteristics that come together, all of the beliefs that come from the top that everybody aligns behind. You can't just change those. You can't change human nature.
And I'll maybe would add, you can't sustain falsehood.
Yes.
Right. You just kind of get
beautifully
tired.
Summarized.
You just jump. Well, maybe there is we thought this was going to be easy. What about is that great phrase? But if we didn't start this process because we thought it was going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was going to be really easy. I got basically, yeah. So, I think you're hitting on something really important here, Karley, because one of the dynamics is, especially first-time founders or people who haven't made it big as a founder, in their heart of hearts, often part of what's going on is that they're proving to themselves that they are a real entrepreneur, that they actually have what it takes.
Yep.
And I think, well, I mean, we all struggle. I mean, if you don't struggle with imposter syndrome, well, that's a whole other conversation. Almost everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, and I think that it's like boiling it down to exactly what you said. is I have a vision, and as an entrepreneur, I am driven to go make it true and see if I can do it. Because there's so many people in the world that are like, yeah, I have a vision, but I'm not leaving my cushy job. I'm just going to continue to be here and push documents because it does what I need it to do.
Yeah. Well, but I think
Great.
what's interesting is that a lot of people have two visions. One is they do have a vision for their company and for their customers and how they want to serve, like the things that you're talking about, but they also have a vision for their own life and a vision of me as a successful entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when there's a lot of anxiety about that first vision, or sorry, the second one, it can eclipse and get in the way of actually realizing or being true or forwarding the vision that's going to resonate with customers. So, because the vision of me being wildly successful and making a lot of money, it's great for me. It's a compelling vision for me, maybe, but it's not a compelling vision necessarily for people who work for me or customers. And so I'm just I think what you're calling people to do is to trust that their customer-facing vision is important, and it's going to make things a lot easier. And so as much as we can, it's natural to be insecure. It's natural to have questions about whether or not we're going to make it, but to try to not act out of that, because then we're like, well, there's an easier way to get to $1 million ARR, and that's like the big milestone. And so maybe should we do that instead? And you're just kind of scattered and going all over. Shiny object syndrome is a result of some panic or some worry.
Yeah. Let me jump in there for a second, because this is really interesting. I think I may have an analogy that'll work for you in the audience. There's got to be there is a faster way to MRR, and that is changing our customer focus to those who are willing to pay more. But that decision comes laden with certain things. And that decision, and I'm making up a narrative as an example of those customers just happen to be a lot harder to work with. And they're not as enjoyable. They aren't our people. So we are then forcing ourselves to be a different kind of people. And like you said earlier, being something that we aren't, showing up inauthentically and dealing with that tension and stress that we're masking up to show up for who they are, not to show up for who is our ideal client that has enough money, the right need, and are phenomenal to work with. That's not always a reality, but how do we come closest to that point? And how I describe that often when clients are pushing me going, well, but our clients, when we talk about their values and defining them, they're like, but our clients really want us to be this. And I'm like, are those your ideal clients? And they're like, well, often the answer is no. But what I describe is a teeter-totter. And I say, remember when you were a kid, and I grew up in the late 70s and early 80s when, playgrounds weren't probably the safest things, and you had a teeter-totter. And you sit on one end, your friend sits on the other. You go back and forth. And if they bounce you hard enough, sometimes you bounce over the handle, or, if the handle just, so it doesn't always hold you where it's supposed to. Well, then their big brother comes along, pulls down the teeter-totter, also sits on it. And then you're playing Charlie Brown, Let Me Down. Or if he starts bouncing it, you're at risk of sliding down to where they want you to be. Well, one, the game's not fun anymore. Two, you're over on their side expecting to act in what they're demanding. And, well, Charlie Brown, let me down. What will you give me? We have no negotiating power because you're all the way over on their side of the teeter-totter. So it's always about maintaining that balance to find that equilibrium as close as you can so that you find that path of ease to achieving your goal. Because as entrepreneurs, we like to think that our energy is infinite. It's not. And swimming upstream all the bloody time becomes exhausting. and things break. We
Yeah.
will continue to swim until we drown or until it is just no longer sustainable. And that's when companies break.
It's a great analogy. And I think what you're encouraging people to think about is that you can't, so when somebody says, well, a customer prospect says, who are you? You can't say, who do you want me to be?
Exactly.
Because they're going to be like, bleh.
And therein lies the inherent challenge. And I'm going to pick on them. And I don't like picking on people, but I see this time and time again. The tried and true and trained marketers who are trained to work in data and go find the data that proves the case or opens up, oh, we should really go after this market. They're going to hammer that home because that's where they see the opportunity. They're not taking into account why the entrepreneur started the business, who is right for them, what their values are. They're not taking into account or have not been trained in, or it hasn't been codified in the company in the non-negotiable core beliefs.
Yeah, I think
who we are, what do we stand for?
Yeah, you got to, like, people taking a position. It takes a lot of courage to take a strong position because
And therein lies the art of positioning, is identifying the people. Because if you do it from the outside in by the data, you're effectively showing up going, okay, guys, I know you like your golf shirts and your cargo pants, but now we're going to be the next version of men in kilts. So here's your kilts.
Right.
No, thanks.
Right. Yeah, you've given me, Karley, a lot to think about, as well as the people who are listening. Thank you for telling us about the Surefire Method, and also just hammering this idea that really it's not that you can't afford to know who you are and lead with that. Is that you can't afford not to, because this is part of why we're struggling. Why, if we're struggling for product market fit, part of the reason for that is that we're not clear on who we are, and it's okay. It's okay to start from the inside and work out.
100%.
Sure, nobody's with data and A/B testing and all the things. I'm not throwing that out.
No, not at all.
But
it's just we need to start from somewhere.
It's okay.
So what is the somewhere that works for us?
Yeah, right.
And how do we adapt and evolve from there without breaking ourselves?
Love it. Thanks for joining me this morning, Karley. I appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Let's stay in touch. See ya.
Cheers.
Founders, if you're struggling to manage goals and execution with your team, HabitStack can help with that. I'm Scott Ward. Thank you for joining me on the HabitStack Podcast.